Welcome to Raised on D&D podcast. Raised on D&D brings you inspirational interviews with tips and strategies to enrich your family's gaming experience. Your host for Raised on D&D has been a dungeon master for over 30 years and a father to 3 gamers. Here is Nick Cardarelli.
Welcome back, gamers. I'm your host, Nick Cardarelli, and this is Raised on D&D. My next guest is from Waterloo, Ontario, Canada. He makes print and play paper miniatures for every genre and designs and writes tabletop RPGs, including Cold Hands, Dark Eyes for Big Eyes, Small Mouth, Dark Fast Dungeons, Save the Day, Anime Hack, and Grandma World. He's also looking to get it back into making comics. He's currently on Patreon, putting out over 40 paper miniatures a month. Please welcome David Okum. Hi, David.
Hello, nice to be here.
Thanks for being on the show. But my children are huge fans of Snowball Wars. We've done that as a Christmas tradition every year, playing a round of Snowball Wars.
Awesome.
And so glad to have you on the show today. How old were you when you started playing D&D and RPGs?
Oh, well, my first RPG, official RPG, was Gamma World. And it was 1999. I think it was the fall. I remember being on the bus. I had just picked it up. And I've been looking at it for a long time. The miniatures had been out for a while. And I'd been bugging people to buy me the miniatures because I didn't have a job. So, that the miniatures just, it wasn't a good sell, lead figures.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't exactly what my parents or siblings wanted to do. So finally I had managed to scrape up some money over the years, and I picked up the boxed edition of Gamma World with first edition. It was amazing. I read it on the bus on the way home. I probably was about 13 years old. And I read it on the bus on the way home, and honestly, it was a paradigm shift. It was like this whole new world opened up in front of me of how I could express my ideas and tell stories. A little bit of backup. From about grade 5, my parents had bought a Super 8 camera. So I had been filming a lot of really bad movies with my friends. And I just was not happy with the way it was going. And I stopped around grade 8. Stopped making them, so about that age, and I was trying to find I could do comics, but I had to learn how to draw. So I just immersed myself in that, and then the role-playing games came along, and I remember, like I said, I was sitting on the bus, I was reading Gamma World, and I was like, what is this? What have I got myself into? But it was brilliant because for me it just opened up all these opportunities of stories I could tell, of ideas that I could express. And I think the first campaign that I ran with Gamma World was not Gamma World. It was a superhero game, believe it or not. So I used the Gamma World character creation to create superheroes and supervillains. And that's how that all started.
So right off the bat, you're customizing and making it your own.
Well, I think that was one of the pieces of advice I think Jim Ward had written in the introduction. I think it was just to make it your own game. You're the one calling the shots. So I ran all kinds of crazy adventures with with Gamma World. Everything from the super gonzo mutants that they have to kind of my knockoff of Daredevil and Alpha Flight. So it was great because I was able to kind of take another toolkit to tell a story, and I think that was the thing that kind of changed me. I think that was a big factor in my development. My marks got better at school. I became more involved in the community. I ran it was called the War Gamers Club back then, but I ran the War Gamers Club at high school. Made tournaments, did all kinds of events. Now I run the role-playing games club at the high school I teach at because I'm a teacher now. So
wow, that's incredible. Was that a group that you started at your high school, or was it already in place when you came?
There was a War Gamers Club, but it was more traditionally a War Gamers Club. So they would bring in Squad Leader or, Battle of the Bulge or Dune or some board game or, diplomacy. But there was a core group of kids that wanted to play D&D. And, that was something I was like, yeah, let's do this. So when I took over the club, it just became mainly the role-playing game club. The war games are still there, and miniature battle games are still there, but we really focused on role-playing after that point.
That is fantastic. And also you're a father, is that right?
I am. Yes, I have 2 daughters from my first marriage, Stephanie and Caitlin, and 3 boys. My daughters are in their 20s now. They're all grown up and living on their own and doing their own thing. And 3 boys who are 18. The oldest, AJ, he's off to university next year. And then 16 with Zach, and 14 for Josh. Wow. So it's a teenage palooza here in quarantine.
Yes. It's very similar to my household. Mine are 14, 12, and 11, and so real close. And you have a Zach and a Josh as well as I do. So that's good.
Very good. Yeah.
And, so with your children, when did you introduce them to tabletop role-playing games?
Oh, man, I was just thinking about this the other day. I was talking to Josh, the youngest, and he must have been about 7 when we started playing. And I think some of the first games we played together were Talisman.
Okay.
The old, Games Workshop game.
Yes.
Which is great. I made, for my daughters, I had made a custom board with Gotham City, so they could play, Harley Quinn and Batgirl and all that. So we played all kinds of variations of you can see I can't leave anything alone. I have to go in and mess everything up. So we've played a lot of Talisman when Josh was about 7, and then we started playing some Snowball Wars. Actually, I made Snowball Wars for them. I made for Christmas. I made individual sets, and they had a hard copy that they could play and keep in their rooms. So that was the origin of Snowball Wars.
I'm so glad you put it up, though, on Drive-Thru-RPG, because the kids love it. For the folks who are listening and don't know about Snowball Wars, if I could, I'd like to tell them a little bit about it. It is little kids having a snowball fight, and all kinds of craziness can happen with abominable snowmen and Santa's elves and zombie snowmen. I mean, it is so much fun, and we play it, like I said before, every Christmas break. We've kind of evolved the terrain a little bit. We've got your paper trees and your paper fences still, because they're so your artwork is so whimsical and adorable. And so we love that. But we've added the little ceramic Christmas village houses.
Oh, nice.
And one year we did a gingerbread house village. We got the little kit, from a big grocery store, and we made the little village houses, and then we put those on the board as terrain for the Snowball Wars. So we did that. So, and they love all those those little tweaks.
Yeah, that sounds so much fun too. Yeah, and I love when people take something that I've made and do something new and different with it. It just it gives it so much more life, and for me, it's kind of breathing. It's kind of like its own entity out there. So that's awesome. That's great to hear. Yeah, I love the pictures. I see the pictures every year, and it's so much fun to show my wife, and she goes, "Oh my goodness," and she's always excited to see them. So I know that there's been some cafes in Europe and like in Italy where they've played at, in cafes, and it's just fun to see how your games evolve in the wild.
Mm-hmm. And travel. I mean, all around the world. And what I love about it is it was a game that you made for your children to enjoy together, and you brought so much joy and become a family tradition for my family. For the folks who are just being introduced to Okumarts, can you tell us a little bit about your RPG lines?
Yeah, sure. Well, it's interesting. Those two games, Darkfest Dungeons and Save the Day, they kind of evolved out of what became Snowball Wars. Because before that, I had an ENnie nomination for a game called Katana Schoolgirls versus Zombie Furries, which was a sort of an anime-inspired fever dream that I had that I decided to make one day. And the game system of that, I was at a wedding of all things. I was at a wedding and I was watching this little kid on the dance floor getting kind of knocked around, but she was like trying to dance, but there was like so much, it was so frenetic, and every time she'd get hit, she'd spin and get back up, and that kind of gave me this idea of the D6 system, of the you roll and they roll, because it kind of developed into this core mechanic that became what you get for Snowball Wars, and then what you eventually get in Darkfest Dungeons and Save the Day. So that poor little girl, well, she's probably in her 20s now, but that poor little girl struggling on the dance floor was the inspiration for that game system.
Did you pull your pen out right then and start making notes, or did you chew on it for a while, get home and start putting it to paper?
Yeah, well, it's funny because I was probably more concerned about her safety. I was thinking, I'm having to do first aid here. But she was fine. She was having a great time. It took about a week after the wedding before I started writing the mechanic down for Katana Schoolgirls. So with Darkfest Dungeons, with the Kickstarter, that thing just exploded into this monster that I'm finishing up. But I think it's a fun core game. I released the role-playing game version of it, and it was a lot of fun. I've been playing that with my friends for a long time now. And Save the Day, it was a superhero version of that, of the fantasy game. And I wanted a game that I could play with my kids and have quick resolution. One thing about superhero games is it gets really bogged down. Mm-hmm. So I wanted something that would I really wanted something that would be a streamlined mechanic that you could, show what a superhero can do, but without a lot of math and without a lot of extra, work on your part. Make a character in 10 minutes and just get adventuring. And that was the whole philosophy behind the games.
And it's so critical, especially when you have younger players. Mm-hmm. Sometimes when you're introducing adult players to role-playing games, that either character creation be quick or you have pre-generated characters ready. Mm-hmm. And one of the things, because we're fans of mutants and masterminds, but one of the things that I kept noticing was my children didn't want to sit down and distribute the points, right? They didn't want to do the hard math of character creation, which can sometimes take a session all by itself, especially as parents. We don't always have the time. But with Save the Day, because character creation is so simple and so fast, they were able to get that feeling of this is my character versus I'm Wolverine or I'm Batman or those kind of things.
Oh yeah.
So it's great for younger players, but these games are wonderful to play with adults as well.
Oh, exactly. Yeah, my regular gaming group, we've been playing since '81. Some of them, they love it. They have stories about the adventures that could not have happened without the system being what it is. So mm-hmm. So having that chance to make a character quickly, having the chance to resolve a situation quickly, we can tell a lot more story in a night. We're not just going to go into one, standoff at on a street or something. We can basically tell the story of an issue of a comic, and that's kind of how the story with Save the Day. It's kind of based on a game turn is a page, and your action is your panel, and you kind of go from there. So
and I love that.
Yeah, I wanted that system that older gamers would recognize, as game turns, as your round. But then I also wanted something that new players could easily understand and grasp right away. And if they're coming at a superhero game, they're probably, at least some of them, are familiar with some comics, so they'd kind of understand the structure of a comic page. So I use that as the foundation. I didn't want to make it too cheesy. I really held back on a lot of the descriptions in the book on that, but the core remains. But I didn't want to beat it too much.
Another thing that I love is your paper miniatures are for every genre. I mean, sci-fi, fantasy, superheroes. There's even kind of some dark Cthulhu-like stuff, horror stuff that you do as well, right?
That's right. Yeah.
But your paper minis on drivethrurpg.com, I mean, we're talking $2, $3 for dozens of minis, and then you even provide skins where if I want to change the color of the uniforms,
that's right.
I can change them. So I can have different squads of the same art, and I can print as many as I want. And I can be, some people, they just like to cut them like a circle around them or a square. And then I like to get crazy with it and really like get in there with the X-Acto knife, make them all 3D, get the Sharpie and color the edges black and make them beautiful, right? Real three-dimensional, they pop on the table. And it's great. It's great because it's affordable, especially for families during this year. That's been really hard on a lot of families. They can have gorgeous art on the table. And then do you also, I know you did some terrain for Star Trek. I really loved your corridors and rooms. That was wonderful. And that really added another dimension to our Star Trek RPGs. And I know for Dark Fast Dungeons, you did do some dungeon corridors as well. Do you do other terrain to add to your miniatures?
Yeah, I'm currently finishing up the instructions for some superhero or modern cityscapes. So there's 2 skyscraper buildings, but they're modular, so you could make them into all kinds of different buildings. And then there's also a raised subway train platform that I've also used in games. So the thing is with a lot of these miniatures and terrain is that I want to use them in my own games. So I think, what do I need this week? And some I play Monday nights. Some weekends, I'm like Friday night, I'm thinking, oh, you know what? I really need a dungeon setup, but I want to make something special for Monday night. So I'll just start from scratch and just build something. And then if it's good, or if I like it, I'll put it up on Drive Thru Role Playing. So a lot of this comes from my own use, my own needs, which probably explains why there's so many genres, because I've been playing with my game group for so long. We've had to mix it up. When you're playing together with the same people, since 1981, 1984, you have to kind of do something different. So I like to think of it as like, what are we going to watch on Netflix today? You know how you scroll around? That's exactly what my process of creating adventures is. I'll sometimes create a whole new campaign, just, like spaghetti Western science fiction. And that becomes Monday's game. And I don't have miniatures for that. So I need to make those miniatures. So, I can't just go out and buy lead miniatures or plastic miniatures for all of this. It would be like, the cost would be outrageous, but also where would I keep them? Where would I put them? So it became kind of originally the Star Trek miniatures started. That was how I kind of started doing paper miniatures as a way of having characters for having miniatures for my friends. I didn't have any Star Trek miniatures around. So I made them and made lots of them. And that's kind of how I do things. I'm going to need them. I'm going to need to use them. And so with terrain now, I've been using other people's terrain. I've been also, kit bashing my own. The thing you mentioned, how you can modify the characters. One thing I loved. Okay, there's so much to talk about. The One Monk Miniatures was a website that Jim Hartman started, and now Squirmy Dad has that. And one thing I loved about those miniature sets is that they weren't locked. The PDFs were open. You could open them in Photoshop or in a photo editing program, and you could cut the heads off and mix and match and make your own thing. So I make sure that all my miniatures, you can do that. You can take those sets and you can take the basics and you can start, Frankenstein monstering them together into whatever you want. Because
wow.
for me, that's such a big part of the craft that I loved when I fell in love with paper miniatures. That I really wanted to make sure that other people could do that, or had that opportunity. Yeah,
that's amazing. And what I love is what a wonderful gift, by the way, that you can make this art, you can share it with the world, that they can mix and match and change them around. You're always the GM, right?
Oh, yeah.
Do you ever get to play?
I'm such a bad. I'm okay. I like playing, but I'm bad at it. I'm impatient. I grandstand. I do crazy voices. I get too. I don't know. So I think my friends' patience. They lost their patience with me early on, and I just said, "Well, I'm just going to run the games," and So I've been doing this for decades, having to come up with a new adventure every week, something different that they're going to be interested in. They're not going to just sit there and play on their phones or, before that doodle or, drink coffee and chat. So it became a matter of entertaining them. And I think my experience as a teacher has also helped me, with, crowd control and discipline and keeping the players in line. So I think I'm naturally. They always say that teachers are the worst students, and I think, I'm kind of that. I think that's how I see it.
I'm the perpetual GM also, and it's very difficult. That getting out of that game master mindset is so difficult. I'm trying to sit back. I'm trying to enjoy. All of a sudden, I'm not just figuring out the meta plot to the situation, but I'm throwing, and not on purpose, by the way. I'm just playing, and I'm going, wait a second, our patron is a bad guy. You guys realize that, right? And the whole table is like, no, there's no way. He's a friend of our character's parents. No, he's not a bad guy. And the poor GM just starts sinking behind the screen, like, oh God, he's going to ruin the whole thing. And I had one game master tell me that it was one of the best sessions he had ever had because the other players who had already been in the campaign, I was kind of making a guest appearance for a couple of sessions. He said it was the best because you had figured it out, you told them, and they didn't believe you. Your character was kind of an outsider of the group. So when the betrayal happened months later, it was so sweeter because they had defended the villains and they remembered that you would warn them. And he goes, it was almost like a planned plot device. But yeah. but it's hard to get out of that GM mindset. As a game master, you experience burnout, don't you?
Yeah. I had this question. I was running a game at a convention a couple of years ago now, and somebody asked me about that because I told them how long I've been GMing and how many years we've had the group together, and a lot of my friends will understand there are tropes in my adventure writing, where they'll recognize a path and they'll follow it and they'll know kind of where I'm going with it because we've been playing for so long. Right. It just comes down to that. What I love about that actually is that I love undermining their expectations. But here's the other thing. I love listening to them chatter about what they think is going on. 90% of the time, it's so much better than my original idea. And so sometimes, just their idea of what they think the adventure is, that's now the new adventure. I'm not married to the old idea. I'm just, I'm going with this because this is so much better. It's got more, everything, all the loose ends are tying together. Everything's, makes sense. It's logical. So we kind of, there's a lot of simpatico with our group. I've got an amazing group of people that I've been, playing with. My friends Seb and Nick, I think, are the oldest in the group. I had a group before them, but Seb and Nick are still playing every week. Seb not so much during the COVID thing, but online I've been playing with my group on a regular basis. And I think Nick started playing with me in '81, which is in high school, which is great. And then my friend Mitch came in. He was an introduction of another friend who's since moved on to Ottawa. And then I brought in my friend who I went to university with, Steve. And then Steve brought in two crazy brothers named Rich and Dave. And that's kind of our group. And people have come and gone, and other people have joined, but that core group is pretty much stuck together since the early '80s and into the '90s, late '80s.
Oh, that is amazing.
And so, like I said, they know every trick in the book. They know what I'm. We've got characters that are like the second generation of other characters, which is insane. Like, why do I still do this? But my superhero campaign, it's kind of silly. Like, if you're playing like a 40-year-old guy in 1986, why is he's not going to be the same age in 2020?
Yeah.
So we have to kind of evolve. The campaign has to move on. So every now and again we have a reboot and crisis event or something, and the universe gets rewritten, and I start making it more and more like what I want it to be. Mm-hmm. We all started with I started with Gamma World with that campaign. It became Champions for many years. Yeah, for many years, decades, it was Champions. And then in the 90s, we were playing the vampire game, storyteller system.
Yes.
And I thought, what if this was a superhero game? So we just wrote up vampires, but instead of like vampire powers and blood points, it became power points and superpowers. And the structure remained the same, and it worked just as well, or didn't work just as well, depending who you're talking to. And it became a superhero setting. And so it was set in the same universe, same characters, just sort of another take at it. And then when Big Eyes Small Mouth came out, the anime game, we used that system for a while. And, eventually got back into 5th edition in 2000 when it came out. And then now that campaign has become the foundation for what Save the Day became, which is amazing legacy when you think about how long that has gone on.
That is just incredible. You looked at it and you said, this would be so much fun as something else.
Exactly.
And you were able to create that, because when I started game mastering and storytelling and things like that, that wasn't something that struck me. Like I took the book and I went, okay, well, this is what we're doing and how it's done. It's crazy because I started with Palladium Fantasy.
I played Palladium Fantasy too. Yeah.
You did? Okay.
I did. And
yeah.
I turned that into a modern horror game.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's called Macabre. And that's my friend Seb got involved in 81. I guess it wasn't 81. It was a little after 81. But by 84, I think I had the campaign pretty much set, and he came in, and so it was a horror genre game, a modern setting, and my campaign was really influenced by the comic Mage.
Okay. Yes, I remember that one.
Yep. Matt Wagner comic. So it had all these sort of Arthurian undertones to it. But I felt that the system, the Palladium system, had something going on there. It had something interesting.
I really enjoyed a lot of aspects of the system, but Palladium Fantasy setting was my first love. I don't know if it was the 7-foot tall wolf men who had like a Romanesque empire in the north, or just such a rich setting. But we loved it. I loved it, and so then my players loved it.
Yeah. Well, my friend Eric, he loved the campaign and the setting, and he went off on his own, doing his own thing eventually after, during high school, and he just detailed that whole world before those books came out. He mapped it out. He every little hex was populated. He figured all these things out. I was really jealous of his players because I wasn't part of that group, but he loved that system and game and setting, and it's such an evocative setting with really fun ideas that are not too dark, not too whimsical. It just had it was a Goldilocks of a setting. That's what it is.
Yes.
Just right.
Just right. And so now your daughters are grown. Your boys are teenagers, and you've been gaming with them since they were young. How has the gaming with them changed from when you started them off, 7 years old, to now?
Oh, it's different now. I mean, over this isolation period, we've been playing, and we played some Star Wars. I think a lot of their ideas of what they want to play come from the media they consume.
Mhm.
So originally, it was just like, we're just going to play this game, and they would just jump right in. But now they're making choices based on what they like with video games or with movies or TV shows and that sort of thing. So I think after seeing The Mandalorian, they really wanted to play Star Wars.
Yeah.
Very simple, straightforward system, and they had a great time. It was a lot of fun. The one thing I think that's different from when they were younger is that we honestly have less time. They've got jobs, they've got school, they've got friends, they've got other things they're doing, and actually having the luxury to sit down and play with them is always fun and wonderful. So it's I think that's the difference. It's just that I wish I had more time to play with them.
I understand that completely. Everyone going in different directions, and during the quarantine time, it made it a little bit easier to sit down and get everyone around the table again. What kind of life lessons and skills are you hoping that your children will kind of take away from the table, moving out into the world and making their own path?
Oh, I mean, I think the first thing is problem solving. You're always going to face problems in your life. You're always going to have adversity. And lateral thinking is such an important skill. You can't really teach it. You have to experience it. And what gaming does is it lets you experiment and take risks, right? You can fail, and it's okay. It's actually sometimes it's more fun in a role-playing game to fail big. And those are sometimes the campaigns and adventures that you still talk about, 30, 40 years later. But I think for one thing, it's the problem solving, it's the lateral thinking. I think it's also a social thing. Like, I have lifelong friends in my group, and we can talk about these campaigns that we've played for hours, and it's probably really annoying when you hear us talk. But I've been to their weddings. I'm the godfather of their children. These are my friends, and I'm so lucky to have them. And I think I really hope that they can take that away as a life lesson, what you can gain through tabletop gaming.
I think one of the reasons that fandom of all stripes has become so popular in our culture is because it's something that people can really bond over.
I agree. It's one of those things that, back in the day, people used to make fun of, tabletop gamers as, not having any friends. Well, the ironic thing is you need to have friends to play tabletop games. So, right. That kind of undermines your argument right there. But yeah, so it's been great that it's made this expansion into popular culture. I've bumped into so many people or talked to so many people who all, they played D&D originally back in the 80s, and they never really thought much of it. It's just something they did, like some people, got into, Star Wars, and then they moved on to different things, but they still like Star Wars. I'm always amazed to hear stories of people that I work with, that, parents of students, people in my neighborhood who will tell me about their adventures they had when they were a teenager with their characters and who their character was. And it's really neat that so many people actually played and the awareness was there, where we always kind of felt it was like a fringe thing, right?
Yes.
And now with the technology, we can reach out and we can find out that, this is a big community. This is something that is capturing people's imaginations, and this is something that we can, we can get ideas from. We can connect with other human beings, and sometimes meet and play with them. I've done sort of meetup groups where we meet at a restaurant and people sign up who want to try games or just haven't had the time to play with their groups. They played as a teenager, but they haven't had a chance now that they're an adult. And it's so rewarding to see them come back week after week, looking forward to playing again, and just the joy that they have and what the ideas they bring in. I mean, the great thing about role-playing games as a GM is that your players are what you're working with here. And you can have the best ideas in the world and fall, head over heels in love with your ideas. But, if it doesn't fit your group, they're no good. So you have to read the room. You have to be able to play the game that they want to play. And I think that's a good skill to have.
You've got a Patreon going now. You're cranking out all kinds of paper minis. So can you tell us a little bit about that and what's behind the curtain at Patreon right now? What can I expect to see when I subscribe?
Oh, well, initially you're going to get the current stuff, what's going on and what's being made. But I think the thing that a lot of people discover is that there's a huge archive of work that's available once you sign up. Like I've got years of paper miniatures there, and I've thought about like retiring sets. But honestly, I think the best part about it is subscribing for I think it's for $3, and there's a $5, and the $5 gets you the full sets. $2 gets you the supporter sets. But I think the thing that people are blown away by is the fact that it's all available. So you can go back into the archives and pick out, some of the older sets. And I'm putting out now, for the past 2 years now, I've been putting out over 40 to 50 miniatures a month, which it seemed daunting, but now it's just kind of like the workflow, right? It's just kind of like, I know what I'm doing. When I put them on digitally, sometimes, it varies. Sometimes I'm 2 days late, something like that. But I always try to get them out the first Wednesday of the month, around there, Wednesday to Friday, somewhere in the last, that area. So I think when people sign up, I try to find out what they're interested in and get to know them. And then I always do like a poll, and then start building from there. There's always extras that show up. I get some commissions and other things that I do, and I always throw them in there as well. So you never know what you're gonna end up with. I ended up doing a set for fundraising for a women's shelter in town, and I think that set I put out on Patreon as well, but people still donated. They still picked it up. So I've been putting half of those donations away, and then my half, and then I'll be presenting that in the summer. So I'm always trying to get other things out there, extra things that people can be interested in. The genres range. I've got steampunk, pulp, 1920s, gangster era stuff. I've got fantasy, science fiction. I've got hard science fiction, and I've got pulp science fiction. I did a set of dogs and cats recently, which was a very popular set. Like everyone loved them. Somebody actually, Paper Realms, who does a lot of my cut files and terrain, he named every cat on Twitter, which I was just blown away by. Every cat got some love, which was great. So with the Patreon, I think that my approach has always been that I want to have fun with this. I want that to be I want people to feel that fun, to feel that energy. 2 sets. So because every month I put out 2 sets. So I think that might be a lot of fun. Deadlands has been getting really popular, and a lot of people are talking about that. And it's harder, I think, to find miniatures for some of these genre-bashed settings. So that might be, it's there. If it's not next month, it's going to be coming up. I've got some fun little doodles of like skeleton cowboys and stuff like that. So, I'm always kind of trying to push it and look at what people are drawn to on my Patreon and what they seem to be enjoying, what they seem to be asking for, and then, going from that. Last month, the month before, I put out a whole set of Greek-inspired miniatures, Greek myth-inspired miniatures, and I had so much fun making them. I really want to make more, so I'm sure I'll have another set of those, or another 2 sets of those coming up in the new year as well. Final thing I wanted to say about paper miniatures in particular is it's such a growing community. There's so many people putting out miniatures. You should really take a look on Drive-Thru Role Playing. great people like Trash Mobs and Kev's Lounge and Paper Forge, Paper Mage. There's so many Brave Adventures. Like there's so much stuff that's out there. You can't name them all, but really take a look at the community, because we all work together. There's like a secret an international cabal of us that work together to try to put out the best miniatures we can, and challenge each other to make them better. So I'm really loving it, and I'm looking forward to, doing even more in the future. I think that's something to look forward to.
That is incredible. David, thank you being here today, sharing with us. Thank you for your art. Thank you for your sharing your imagination and just the way you look at games. And you said you can't leave it alone. You got to mess with it. But I really think that you make it better. We're so excited to see what's coming out next and what you're going to do in the future. So David, thank you so much. Thank you for being on the show.
Thanks so much. Nice chatting with you.